Enfin. Perhaps we have said too often that objects do not exist. Perhaps we have repeated so often that it has become an empty formula, that there is no self, and perhaps it may not even be quite true. Indeed, nothing expressed by split mind could ever be anything whole. After all, do we not know that every dharma, thing, object, neither exists nor does not exist? May we not have stopped halfway, failed to penetrate to the heart of the matter, remained only half turned away from the wrong direction of looking? We may have lacked the insight to see the living truth. If a monk had said to a tongue master that we have been saying with the same assured self-satisfaction that we have said it, would he not have received would he not have received 30 blows with the magisterial staff instead of acquiescence he smugly anticipated? If so, what would he have said if, as a result of his beating, he had been happy enough to see the whole truth in a flash of pure insight? Would he not have said, objects are not objects at all? No object is an object? The phrase, an object is not an object, is not the same as the phrase, no object exists. Why so? It may mean that an object is something else. Non existence is a mode of existence. Existence and non existence are a pair of interdependent counterparts, neither of which can exist alone, as half of a pair. As Wang Po told us, they must find their resolution in their mutual negation. Let us take an example, the classic one. We have said that an ego does not exist, is not at all, at all. In fact, it neither exists nor non exists. So what? Ego is not an ego at all. That is surely the insane of the matter. And what does that mean? It means that ego is never an object. It does not state that it cannot be something else. But what could it be? What could anything be that is not an object? All we can say is that the nearest we can get to indicating anything that is not an object, for even subject becomes an object for us when it is objectified as such in thought or its verbal expression, is to refer to it as non object. So, since objects are not objects at all, they might perhaps be considered as non objects, and an ego or a self as being non ego or no self. But what is non object or non ego, no self? What is it? Is it not the object, ego, self, when that is not an object, ego, self? Is that not why the masters of Chan, as of Vedanta, that is of all Advaita, occasionally shake us up by remarking that phenomena are real, that even concepts are real? After all, nothing is either more or less real than anything else, for reality too, being a concept and object, is not at all real, since it is objective and can only be such in its negation. Then all that is left to us to ask is, what is anything? What are all things, material or psychic, when they are not that? When they are devoid of all trace of objectivity? Obviously, since they are not anything objective at all, we could not, in the seriality of time, find a name for what they are, for whatever name we found would make them that which they are not. So, an answer as such can only be negative from our dualistic standpoint. Colloquially, might we not say that it is misleading to think that all things are nothing, but revelatory to perceive that everything is no thing, that is, not a thing? Why? Because this non conceptual non objectivity, which they, all things, are, is this, not that. How obvious the answer is, but how frustrating. Since we cannot think it, much less give it a name, make a word of it, without thereby turning it back into the object which it is not. But does that matter? Does it suffice to in-see it? Does not that in-seeing itself destroy all need, together with all possibility of conceptualizing it? And that just because the in-seeing itself is the answer? The eye that cannot see itself knows neither need nor regret for the non-eye that it is. The eye that cannot see itself knows neither need nor regret for the non-I that it is. Note, let us be careful not to draw conclusions that the premises do not warrant. Let us remember that that which is perceived cannot perceive, as Wang Po told us. The perceived is the object which, as such, cannot perceive. Only this which it is, non-object, can do that. and that because object is subject and subject is object. In short, the sensorially perceived universe is not at all objective, and that this is not the seer of that, but the looking at it. That and this THIS is not the seer of that, but the looking at it. It is thought and no thought, mind and no mind, action and non action, self and no self, object and no object, as concepts, each one and all regarded conceptually, that are not as such. And their so called suchness, isness, quiddity, is the presence of their phenomenal and conceptual absence.